Hi everyone! Well, it's Friday the 29th of May and it's 5 weeks now since we first planted our little beans in those tiny little pots. Week 5 is our last week in the diary, so I think we should have a little recap before we have a closer look at these plants. So we started, didn't we, with our bean diary, put my name on the front. I planted my bean on Friday the 24th of April, seems like quite a long time ago now. We looked at all our equipment that we added, and we added some equipment on in about week 3 I think it was as well. So we had compost, canes, watering can, gloves, the beans, the planting pots. We needed a trowel for that compost. Then we needed some small pots, but they were bigger than the original ones we put them in, and some string as well to tie down. So hopefully your equipment page looks something like that as well. Then we talked about what the plants needed to grow. Obviously we've not been doing too bad because they're growing quite well. They needed the light and the warmth of the sun and the warmth from the greenhouse. And it's got very warm this week, something that we're going to look at shortly. They also needed the soil and the compost there for the food and some water. So we first went to week 1 and I followed the Ghana plant. It's the one that I tracked all the way through here. So Friday the 1st of May, that was the week 1. It was 0 centimetres tall and the bean had moved to the top of the compost, but it hadn't started to grow. So that was a week after we had planted them. Then 2 weeks after we planted them, Friday the 8th of May, it had sprouted and it was 4.3 centimetres tall. And the bean had burst out of its seed and the stem has started to grow upwards with the first leaves starting to spread out at the top. Then we went on to week 3, 3 weeks since we planted them, Friday the 15th of May, and it had grown to a fantastic 16 centimetres tall. The plant had grown an extra 11.7 centimetres and the leaves had started to open up and get much wider. And the new stem was growing out as well at the top. So it's doing really well. So week 4, which was last week, Friday the 22nd of May, we repotted them in between these weeks to give them more space to grow because they were getting too small for their little pots that were there and they weren't quite ready to go outside, so we chose to repot them. And last week we put canes in to help them because they were all growing quite tall and bending over, so we thought we would put some canes in. Before we look at week 5, let's have a little talk about what's happened this week. So we've had lots and lots of good weather this week, so it was an ideal time perhaps to take them out of the greenhouse. Believe it or not, it was a little bit too warm in there for them, so we wanted to give them some sunshine and some sunlight, and just light didn't have to come from the sun, and so we put them outside. I'm trying to get them stronger as well and hardier so we can actually plant them outside. Now some of the leaves weren't too happy because on the first day I perhaps left them in the direct sunlight for too long, but we can have a look at those as well. And we also need to have a closer look at what happened when I put some canes in last week. I know that I told you to be very careful how you tie them, and maybe on 2 of the plants I haven't been very careful. So with all that said, let's take a closer look and see how these plants are doing this week. So the first plant we're going to look at this week is Lovell, and as you can see from the main picture, this plant has struggled with growing its leaves from the very beginning. Its first leaves still only measure 4 centimetres across, and the smaller one hasn't really opened up much at all. As we take a closer look on this picture, you can see that it's still quite wrinkled around the edges. As we look higher up the plant though, the next set of leaves, it only has 2 that have opened up, unlike all the other plants who have consistently had groups of 3 leaves. But this one, again, the other 2 aren't doing too bad, but the third one on here, it doesn't seem to be growing at all. However, if we look even higher up the plant, it does have another set of leaves that are starting to grow, and this time all 3 leaves are growing, and they measure 1 centimetre across. In the background as well, you can see another set about to start opening up. So although its lower leaves are struggling, it's beginning to grow well and getting stronger each week. So the next plant we're going to look at this week is Ghana. And this is the one that I've been following, and unfortunately has had a little accident. If you remember last week, to help them, I gave them some canes so that we could gently tie the plants to it in order to keep them nice and straight and upright and encouraging them to go straight. I also did say that if you needed to do this, you have to be really careful not to tie the string too tightly because it's really delicate at the top. However, if we take a closer look in, you can see that the top of the plant, the third lot of leaves that were growing, are unfortunately no longer there, as the string had cut into that thin, delicate stem at the top and caused it to break and therefore stop it from growing, which is a little bit disappointing. But if we take a closer look at the top, this plant has now started to grow with an extra new stem where it began splitting off before. So hopefully now it will continue to grow on the new stem and some more leaves will come there too. Now if we take a look at the leaves, we can see the bottom ones are still the same size, they're still 7 centimetres across, and the ones slightly higher have grown an extra 1.5 centimetres, so now they are 6.5 centimetres across. So that's great. So all the leaves on this plant are doing quite well, although they've slightly faded from having some direct sunlight this week. But they're not doing too bad, they're still the same size, so it's not been affected. So hopefully it shouldn't make a difference to what's happened with the top of this plant, but we'll keep a close eye on it. So our next plant this week is Harding. So this was one of our smallest plants a few weeks ago, and as you can see from the main picture, it seems to be growing well with good wide leaves. However, you can tell here, and I'm sure you've already spotted it, the same thing has happened to the top of this plant where the string was attached to the cane, and it's sliced in again to that very thin piece and it's come away. Now this wasn't growing as much as the previous plant, but it's still going to stop it from growing now where the string was attached. But as you can see, it's actually started to wrap itself around the top of the cane, perhaps to steady itself a little bit like an anchor to help it grow up a bit further. Again, it's started to grow out of that stem, and hopefully it's going to produce another one with some more leaves on there, so it will continue to grow up just like the Ghana plant did. If we look at the leaves on this plant, the bottom ones, again, they're still the same size, 6 centimetres across, and have faded as well slightly from being in that direct sunlight, but it's not stopping that plant from growing, and it's keeping on with its nice wide leaves that are attracting that light. And hopefully this one will continue to grow too. And finally, let's have a look at Mallory, our tallest plant since we started to grow. And as you can see from the picture, it is still growing and only just fits into this picture as well. If we take a closer look at the top, we can see that it's higher than the cane and it's actually starting to curl out sideways and down. It already has 3 sets of leaves on, and at the very top of the stem it has 4 new buds, all waiting for those leaves to grow out as well. So it's doing really well at producing those new buds and those new leaves. It's just perhaps quite delicate at the top. Now this plant always had large leaves and it's attracted the lights to help it grow. And both of its leaves at the bottom are still 8 centimetres wide across, which has helped it. But if we look at the second group of leaves, you can see that unfortunately it has suffered quite a bit from being in the direct sunlight, and it's faded and wrinkled a lot more than the other leaves have. However, they still do measure the same size as they did last week, 7 centimetres across, which is great, so it's not affected the size, and it is still there to get that light onto it to help it get stronger. So it's now another set of leaves above, which are 4 centimetres across, and some smaller ones above that to help it grow. So the more that these leaves come out, the more it's going to grow, which is brilliant really. Now even though it looks very tall, right at the bottom as well of this plant, he's got a very, very sturdy stem. So I think this plant's going to be quite ready to go out and be planted outside, hopefully to have some more canes put against it so it will help it grow up. So the next thing we need to look at is how much they've grown. So let's go back to Lovell and see what's happened here. Now last week it was 42 centimetres, and this week, if we measure to the top of the stem, it's 42 centimetres as well. But if we include those leaves, you can see it's grown just 3 centimetres taller, up to 45 centimetres. So I think we can take it from the top of the leaves to show that it is still growing up a little bit. Now Ghana's next. Unfortunately, as we said, it's may not be as tall as it was, because last week it had grown up to 37 centimetres, and then with that slight accident with the stem being damaged and it's come off, it's actually 14 centimetres shorter this week, and it's 23 centimetres tall. But the plant's still doing really well, it's still growing, its leaves are there, and it's getting stronger and ready to be planted outside. Harding, that last week was 59 centimetres, and again we've had a little bit of a problem there with the top of that stem, and it's 22.5 centimetres shorter this week, so it's gone down to 36.5 centimetres. But again, just like the Ghana plant, I'm not really worried because it looks like a really strong, sturdy plant at the bottom, and as well, I think that might be ready for going outside. And finally, Mallory, let's have a look. As you can see from the photo, it's even taller than the ruler itself. If you can see at the very top, it's actually bent over. So what I've had to do is actually put another ruler on top and measure it as well. Unfortunately, I've not been able to take a photo of that because I haven't had the hands to hold everything at the same time. But it's actually grown a staggering 49 centimetres. And it measures now a whopping 140 centimetres approximately. So this plant, I think, is getting really strong now and really will be ready to go outside. Great, so that is all the plants this week. We've taken a closer look and seen what has happened. Now it's time to update our diary. The last page, week 5, Friday the 29th of May. So I'll continue with my plant, the Ghana plant. Unfortunately, it's not as tall this week, 23 centimetres, after we had our little accident that we've been talking about. So I've written, after repotting the plant, I attached it to a small cane, and unfortunately the string has cut into the thinner stem at the top and cut it off, so this week it is actually shorter. The plant's continuing to become stronger at the bottom as the stem is getting thicker, so down here, so it will be ready to go outside soon. So despite the fact that some of the leaves have been burnt slightly in the sun, is singed and they've got a different colour, and despite the fact 2 of them have been cut off at the top, the plants are doing really, really well. And hopefully this coming week, I'm going to continue to keep putting them outside, still in their pots and on the tray. I'll put them outside but not in the direct sunlight, and this will get them stronger and stronger. And I'm hoping by the end of this week that I'll be able to put them and plant them outside in the vegetable patch. Now it is week 5, which is the last week of our diaries, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue with the plants. So next week, as I say, fingers crossed, I am hoping to be at the vegetable patch and taking them out of their pots and putting them in there, and we'll need to get some more canes out and to help them. So do come and see me next week, and I'll carry on and we can see what happens with these, and hopefully soon we'll be able to get some of our own beans. Okay, everybody, take care. See you next week.